Ash Harrier, welcome to Totally Lit. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm extremely excited to be here.
I loving that you're a West Australian because I'm doing a little bit of work with the Australian Short Story Festival, doing a few
Ooh,
interviews for them. So I feel like I'm a bit connected to WA at the moment. Do you want to
yeah, that
tell
seems to be
me?
going great guns.
Yes, it's very exciting. And it's amazing in the world we're in now that you can be anywhere in the world and be connecting with anyone. So I'm like, oh, I'm over here in Brisbane, but I feel like I'm part of the festival over there just through the magic of our internet connections. Um,
Yeah.
but thank you so much for joining me. I'd love to chat to you about your YA ghostling because it has a little bit of a history, a bit of a journey to where it is at the moment. Would you like to share with me where it began and where it is now?
Yeah. So about 12 years ago, I had just come out of a failed marriage and I actually met a new man and I wasn't really ready for that at that point, but God damn it, he's stuck around and he's still with me now. And the
Hooray!
reason the reason I tell you this is that as you do when you first start dating, you share what your hobbies are. And my hobby was writing. So I told him that. And he was very interested to read something that I'd written. So I gave him something that I had been working on and submitting to publishers for years and years and years. And every time it got rejected, I would take it back and I would rewrite it again, flogging the dead horse, basically. So he said to me, why don't you, this is really good. Why don't you send it in and see if you can get it published? And I was like, well, what do you think I've been doing for the past 20 years of my life? And he said, oh,
Yeah,
so no one wants to publish that book? And I said, no, no one at this stage. No, not yet.
I
And he
love
said,
a
well, why don't you
supportive
write
partner.
something new? I know, right? You can tell when someone's not a writer because they ask that question. Oh, why don't you get that published? So he said, why don't you write something new? And actually, that hadn't occurred to me for quite a long time.
Mm.
So I went, okay, I could try that. So I sat down and I wrote something new and I sent it off to all the usual places, the big five and all of that. Got zero response. And then I actually knew someone who had some success with smaller digital only presses. And I thought, well, maybe that could be a foot in the door for me. So I sent that off to a couple and someone wanted to publish it. So that was my first published book. And it was a young adult called The Seventh.
Mhm.
It's paranormal and it was around 65 to 70,000 words. Terribly excited, thought that I was going to be a huge runaway success, the next Twilight and all of that. And, I'm sure that it sold at least a couple of dozen copies in the first year. So
Oh, the
it
pain of
didn't do
being a writer.
it didn't do hugely well, but it was a book and it was out there and I wrote the sequel and then I started experimenting with all kinds of other things like self-publishing and different genres. But that one just sort of sat there and ticked away. Eventually, I wrote the third book because it was a trilogy that went out in about 2020. And then those three books just were out there on Amazon and on iBooks and all of the other kind of online outlets or print on demand. And eventually, they did rack up a few thousand reads. But the more I thought about them and the more I looked back at them, the less happy I felt about them because
Mhm.
they were my first books. And you know what it's like when, I don't know if you do any kind of creative art, but do you ever look back at like one of the earliest things you've ever made and realize how far you've come?
Yes.
Yeah. Or even in your writing, you probably
Mm.
do the same.
Often
So,
I'll read something and go, why? What was I thinking? Why did I think that was good?
exactly. Or how could I have said that? You learn a lot as a human, even over a 10-year period. So this year, it's actually 10 years since I wrote that book, or since I got the contract to get it published anyway. And I thought to myself, God, I'd love to have that book back and just rewrite it. And
Mhm.
then I remembered that I've actually got rights reversion clause of 5 years. So I actually do have that book back if I want it. The only one I didn't have back officially was the third one, which came out in 2020. So I emailed the publisher and I said, look, I'm thinking of taking this back. I want to rewrite it. obviously, if I'm putting out book 1 and 2 as rewritten books, then you won't have those anymore. So it doesn't seem much point keeping book 3. And they totally agreed with me. They were lovely about it. I thanked them. We parted on good terms.
Amazing.
And they gave me the rights for all 3 back. And then I embarked on the rewrite and I had so much fun.
Was
So
it
this
like
book, the
going
main
home?
changes. Sorry?
Was it like going home, revisiting those stories?
Yes. I don't write fan fiction, my kids do, but this felt like writing fan fiction with my own characters.
You're
I was
your own
basically
fan.
writing
I
new
love it.
scenes. Yeah. New scenes, new backstory, new sub storylines and more character development. Yeah, it was just huge amounts of fun. And it was really good because I was in this lull where I was waiting to get some edits back.
Mhm.
I didn't really have much else to do. So I just used that time to rewrite this book. I added 30,000 words, so it's now nearly 100,000 words. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
Is that just book 1? Is
Yes.
that length?
Yes.
That's a lot
So,
of words.
excuse me. Yeah, the kind of dark academia slash paranormal genre seems to be quite open to books around that length
Mm.
now. So I felt comfortable writing it at that length. And I really don't think it is a YA in the sense that it was before. My characters have changed age. They're actually a little bit older now. They're almost adults. They're in their
Grown
final
up.
year of high school. Before they were 16, so now they're kind of coming up 18. It's the same characters, the same school, they've got the same psychic gifts, but a lot of other stuff has changed. I've got, yeah, just a whole lot more depth going on in
Yeah.
there. And so that was really rewarding to do. The other thing that I really wanted to change was it wasn't very diverse. So I wanted to make it more diverse. So I did that. And the other one was that having 2 teenagers over the past decade, they're both kind of coming out of the teenage years now, but really taught me a lot about mental health and teenagers. So
Hmm.
I improved that. I think I gave that more nuance and more sensitivity. It was a little bit insensitive before. So that was nice to be able to kind of
Mm.
jettison some of that stuff from the older Sasha or the older Ash, I should say. Get my own name wrong.
I do that all the time. Because I write under Kai Garvey and
Yeah.
and podcast under that, but I'm really Kylie, and I do sometimes go, oh yeah, that Kai's me. That's me. Uh, And
Yeah.
have your kids read it since you've? Oh well, have they read the first version and the second version?
Yeah, so they definitely read the first version, and I kept them apprised of what was happening in the second version.
Hmm.
Neither of them really enjoy reading books. They like reading fan fiction, but not
Mm.
not physical books. So I just told them what was happening, and they seemed really excited about it. I actually involved them a lot because they were my reference points for
Yeah.
today's teenage zeitgeist. So whenever I thought that something sounded dodgy or middle-aged, I would read it out to them and say, hey, does this sound okay? And they would go, yeah, that's cool. Or they would go, Mom, please let us help.
I must admit, I recently did a workshop at a bookshop with some kids and felt a million years old because I did not understand what they were talking about. I'm like, oh, lost my cool.
Oh,
What am I going to do? I have to get across like all the lingo, which
oh, the
just
lingo.
saying
And they
that
use it
makes me
deliberately
sound
at us
old.
now as a weapon, don't they? To make us feel old.
Yes. Uh,
Yeah,
um,
so that was a long story made even longer. And then what I did was I thought, all right, I'm going to republish this. How am I going to do it? There's going to be some costs involved. I can handle that, but it is a big step. And then a friend of mine, Christy Nita Brown, who you may have heard of,
yes, I know.
yes, she said, "Why don't you do a Kickstarter? All the cool kids are doing them." I said, "What the heck is Kickstarter?" So I had to go online and do some serious research at that point. But as soon as I saw it, I thought, "This is exactly what I want to do."
Hmm.
Mm. So then it was the
And
learning curve of Kickstarter.
yes, well, because you can't just go, I'm going to do a Kickstarter
Mhm.
and see it's the same as using Patreon, or I have a Buy Me a Coffee account
Yes,
for the podcast. But if no one knows it exists, nobody's going to contribute. So did you have to
exactly.
sort of do a bit of learning around how to market that idea?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, which I'm jumping a little bit ahead here, but was educating my readership, my existing
Mm.
readership, on what a Kickstarter was, because they don't move in that circle.
Yep.
I've kind of got a readership of print books
Mm.
within Australia because my books are in bookshops. And I couldn't reach anyone through my previous books because they were all on Amazon and all that. You know, nothing had ever sold through any kind of direct way. So I didn't have anyone's contacts. And I really had shifted so far away from that era of when my first book came out that I don't know if any of those people even see what I post anymore or follow
Yeah.
me
Mm.
anymore. Yeah, so once I had actually mastered the Kickstarter system, which was the first learning curve, and the best way to do that is to go and join a group on Facebook called Kickstarter for Authors, by the way, if anyone's thinking about doing
Oh,
this.
I've got my phone
Yes,
right here. I
really
might
good.
check that out.
Yes, extremely useful. You're not allowed to post for a couple of days, which is a really important part of
Hmm.
the process. 'Cause then, because your first temptation when you go in there is to say, so how do I do a Kickstarter? And they have just got so much information in there already, and it's really well organized. So you're much better off spending a couple of days just looking around and searching on keywords. So then I was finally allowed to post. So I did start asking a few questions, and I realized really quickly that I was doing it all wrong.
Hmm.
I had gone into Kickstarter thinking I'm going to pitch to make all the money I need to produce this book.
Yep.
Editing costs, proofreading, cover design, production, all of that stuff. And it was coming in at least $6,500,
Okay.
which, you know, it could probably sounds pretty normal for a book production or even quite low. But that's not how Kickstarters work. You don't do it like that. You don't ask the people to pay for stuff that you were going to pay for anyway when you put your book out into the world.
Mm.
What you ask them for is to support you to do a special edition.
Okay.
So it's like an advanced edition or a special one of that you wouldn't normally sell.
Hmm.
Special editions could be just early, or they could be actual special, you know, gilded edges and naked covers and hardcover and all of the kind of fancy stuff, end pages and painted edges and artwork within the book. So I stripped out all those extra costs that I was going to be covering anyway, like editing and proofreading, because I knew I was going to put this book out myself. And I made it purely about, hey, come along on this ride. I'm going to have an early edition. It's special. It's going to be hardcover. It's going to have artwork in it, and it's going to be, you know, have all your names in it as part of the acknowledgements. And I put that out there instead. And it went really well. And I ended up making $5,000 anyway. So it did end up
Hey,
covering the cost of the production almost.
fantastic.
Yes.
So
So
offering
with a
some
Kickstarter, though, you
value,
do need
I was going to say, offering some value that is different from what someone else would be able to get outside of the campaign is the key, isn't it?
exactly
Yes.
because why else would they? You know, it's why wouldn't they just wait until it comes out in its normal form on
Mm-hmm.
Amazon or off my web shop or whatever and just get it then? So it has to be something special that they want to get behind.
Mm-hmm.
And you include a whole bunch of rewards that won't be in the usual copy of the book. And then
Okay.
you can have, if you hit those sort of levels, tiers, then you can have stretch goals and everyone's getting all this cool merch. So it's been really, really good fun because it's sort of created a whole merch ecosystem and creative ecosystem around the book, including extra story,
Mm-hmm.
prequel short stories, alternative point of view, post-credit scenes and stuff like that that weren't there before. So that's been
That's
really
very
rewarding too.
exciting. And did you find, like, when you were using the tips from the Facebook group, were you coming up with ideas yourself, or were you being inspired by other members of the group to come
Yeah,
up with all those great ideas?
definitely inspiration from the members in the group. I figured why reinvent the wheel if there's stuff that's working? The only thing
Yeah.
that I did bring to I mean, I brought my own kind of spin to everything. So when it was an art page, I decided that I wanted it to be a map of the school
Yeah.
that the kids go to. And when it was people do kind of art cards as well that people can put up around their room, like postcards. So I talked to my kids about it, and one of them suggested tarot style. So we've created this kind of 7 tarot card set, which represent
Oh,
all of the psychic gifts. And my family is full of artists, so I got all my family to do the art, and they're absolutely
amazing.
beautiful. So that was really fun. We just got those delivered yesterday. But the one thing that I really didn't want to do was inundate people with stuff they didn't want. So I made sure that it wasn't, first of all, I didn't want any plastic going out there. I just don't want to add to the plastic in the world. And second of all, I kept some of it digital so that we were, again, being as sustainable as possible. And I also made sure that they were quality things, not just kind of your boring standard bookmarks that go out. I've made sure that all of my bookmarks have got spot gloss, title,
Oh, they look
tassels,
cool.
things like that. And
Sorry,
I also
listeners,
gave
nobody
them
can see that, but they do look cool.
and I also gave people the option to opt out of merch. So if there was
Okay.
stuff they didn't want or had no use for, in the end, when they got the survey asking for their address so I can send all the goodies, I gave them the option to opt out of anything they didn't want.
And do you feel that having all that merch as extra does add value? Has it cost you any extra than you expected in terms of using this as a funding method for your book?
Yes, there are some costs that you don't expect. I still feel like I'm in front, but I guess overall, I wouldn't say that I've covered the entire cost of making all this stuff and the book,
Hmm.
because I did have to make those outlays of editing and cover design and proofreading. But I went a lot further towards covering everything than I would have otherwise. I
Okay.
did make sure that the Kickstarter itself covered everything that everyone's going to get.
Yeah.
So all of the books, the merch, and all of that, they're all covered. You do get caught short on the postage, so be careful with that. If you're planning a Kickstarter, make sure that you really, really go into exactly what the cost is going to be. And remember that when you send something to America, it's not the same as sending something to Germany or, there are
Okay.
different
You
costs for
need to
different country and they
research the
can
postage.
significantly differ.
Mm.
You sort of don't expect to get any backers from countries that aren't completely fully English speaking, but you
Mm.
do. So, I got one from Czechia, one from Spain, one from Germany, and a few from Canada, a few from America, none from England, which surprised me. I thought I might get
Mm.
some from England, and a bunch from
Hopefully, some
Australia as well.
English listeners might, some of our UK listeners might jump on and place an order. It is interesting when you have a podcast. I sometimes jump on and see what countries are listening, and I'm like, oh, there's somebody in Canada, there's someone in New England listening, and like,
That's so
yeah,
cool.
you don't really realize the reach that you potentially have when you're sending things out into the universe.
Yeah, that's awesome. That must be really rewarding.
It can be that I'm like, oh, gotta be careful what I say. Although I am thinking about saying a hello to everybody every now and then. But yeah, it
Yeah,
does
you
tickle
should.
my fancy a bit when I see someone in Paris has listened to like, oh, yay. It's like I'm traveling, even though I'm
Yeah.
just in my office at home. But yeah, if you think about it, it's like, oh, I'm traveling all around the world. How
Yeah, I've got all
exciting.
these friends in different places.
So, how did you achieve that reach in terms of reaching to someone in Chechnya? How did that happen?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I think the Kickstarter system itself has already got its committed, I don't even know what you'd call them, members, and they are hunting actively for things that they want to back. So
Right.
they're interested in this stuff. There are people on there who buy their books through Kickstarter because they love special editions, they love beautiful things. So they shop through
Mm.
Kickstarter, and Kickstarter itself has this lovely little thing called projects we love. And if you've done a good job on setting everything up and got a decent number of followers before you launch, and then you fund, you might get the projects we love sticker, which
Oh,
means that
exciting.
which means that they then send it out in their own promotional materials to people who are already part of the Kickstarter system. But I basically took the advice of the Facebook group and
Mhm.
posted way more than I was comfortable with for a month. Which meant at least once a day bleating on about this bloody Kickstarter and just feeling really awkward about the whole thing. But it was worth it. It had to be done. It's
Mm,
just part of the process. So you need to kind of commit to that. I also did some paid advertising on Facebook and Instagram, a little bit on TikTok. Have
I'm
no
afraid of
idea if
TikTok.
that worked. Sorry?
I'm afraid of TikTok. I'm like,
Oh, me
oh,
too. I have become
I
afraid
don't
of
know how to make
TikTok.
a reel or a video.
Well, when I started to do this, I thought I've got to get onto TikTok because of Book Talk. So I watched a couple of YouTube videos on how to do it. And, sat there like a white middle-aged woman, basically trying to learn how to make reels or TikToks or whatever. And it was actually pretty straightforward once I puzzled it through and watched these few videos. I'm pretty sure that my videos were incredibly embarrassing. But I thought, well, I'm going to get out there and do it anyway. And I decided what I would do is try and add value to my posts by
Yep.
following my Kickstarter journey through TikTok. And I talked exactly about what I was doing. So I didn't just talk about the book. I said, all right, I'm doing this. I don't really know what I'm doing. So I'm just going to tell you all the stuff I learned. So I would get on every couple of days and say, right, I realized that I was doing everything wrong. Now I've changed it all. And oh my God, my budget was way off. Yeah. So I kind of really opened the door to show people what was behind it. And
Fantastic.
it was fun and it was good practice. And I know what I'm doing now. I've actually taken it off my phone for a bit because I found that it was frying my brain. I was just watching too
Mm.
many TikToks.
I find, yeah, there's some nights where I'll go to bed and I might just start flicking through a few reels, and then suddenly it's like an hour later. And I, especially there's some like storytelling reels, like where there's a comedian and each reel is the next part of the story, and you could just get sucked in. I'm like, oh, I wish I could do that with my stories. Just
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah, you try and
telling a
find the
short
magic
story.
ingredient, don't you? But
Yeah.
I don't think there is one. I think you just have to hit the right people at the right moment with the right story.
Yep.
And then it takes off. And if that doesn't happen, it's just the way it is.
And so have you been happy with your, I guess, pre-orders from that campaign?
Yeah, very happy. It's great because it means that there's going to be, maybe 150 books out in the world before it comes out in February officially. So
Fantastic.
hopefully people will be reviewing and, spreading the word. And I'm also using it as an opportunity to order extras so that I can send them to kind of bookstagrammers and booktalkers if they want them. And to, I guess, use it as a little bit of a run up, to make sure that it looks perfect and that it's printing well and that there aren't any problems or faults in it so that when they do start selling, everyone will be happy with them.
And are you doing all of the printing process yourself, or have you outsourced that to like Ingram Spark or something like that?
Yeah, I wanted to keep it simple because I'm so inexperienced at this kind of thing. So I went with Ingram Spark.
Oh, yeah, I mentioned
Obviously,
them.
yes, I could guess. I found that the cost is not as good as you can get it if you do follow your own, like find your own printer.
Mhm.
But I also knew that I was going to be drop shipping a lot of these into other countries,
Yep.
which means that I'm ordering them, like buying them in US dollars, ordering from the US, Ingram Spark, and it's getting shipped within the US. So to keep the cost minimal,
Mhm.
that's how you do it. So I knew that if I got them all printed here, I'd then have to ship them all to the US, which is
Yep.
like $40 to ship something.
Especially that size book as well.
Yeah, it ended up 400 pages and, it's not light. It's over half a kilo. So I was really glad I did it that way in the end. I would love to have been able to do a local print run and also
Mm.
support an Australian printer, but I just can't make the numbers work yet. So
Yep.
if I start to get demand for it or shops want it or something, then I'll look at that. But at this stage, I'm just going to try and keep it simple.
And have you got a copy yourself, like a hard copy yet?
I do, yeah. I've got
Or
got the soft cover, like the paperback, and I've got the hardback, and they look beautiful. Actually, it didn't. The first hardback cover didn't work. We had cover designer and I, we were both pretty new to the. Do you know what I mean by the dust jacket, the folding page
yeah,
that goes
yeah,
over
yep.
the hardcover? Yeah. So I ordered one of each just to make sure they looked right, and the hardback came back with it was just slightly off. It wasn't sitting in the center. So she adjusted that and then it was perfect after that. So now it looks beautiful. I got them both done in the matte finish, which looks stunning. And yeah, it's really cool because I love that the hardback has actually got a different cover underneath the dust jacket. It's got
Oh,
like a
cool.
plainer, simpler with more kind of iconography. And on the outside, it's got the full cover. So that was really fun too.
And how did it feel? Because initially it was published digitally and now you've got something you can hold in your hand. How did that
Mm.
feel when the book arrived?
Yeah, really special because the previous iteration, when it was the seventh, it was available in print, but only through Amazon POD. So
Right.
I did have some, but they just felt really inferior to what I've got now. This is a bigger book size. It's not the mass market
Mhm.
paperback. It's the 6 by 9. And I was able to choose all the finishes I wanted and, the thickness of the paper and the fonts and all of that. Just looks 20 times better than it did. Completely new cover as well. And I feel like it really has it was great to be able to shift it from that 2015 era cover wise into the 2024,
Mm.
2025 era as well.
And
Yeah, but it
how
does feel
long
lovely. And every time I look at it, I smile. Whereas the other one, I would look at it and be glad that I was published, but I would never feel 100% happy with the quality of the book.
and how long has the project taken you from the time you've received your rights back to publication, which is in February?
Oh, I reckon that I made the decision around February, March this year. They gave the rights back within a week. So I immediately pulled the file and started working on it. I made the decision to do the Kickstarter around the same time. So I was working on it and getting costs and starting setting up the Kickstarter to do a 3-month run up because you need to try and gather as many followers as you can before you launch it.
Mhm.
I launched with, I think it was around 60 followers, which is pretty good. It's not huge, but it's good.
Yep.
Yeah, you want to try and get like a minimum of 50. And then the Kickstarter happened in July. So that was only like a 3-4 month turnaround, I guess. I finished rewriting the book around July, August, sent it off for editing, then proofreading. So yeah, now I'm kind of in the waiting period. I'm just fulfilling the Kickstarter right now. I'm actually sending stuff out now. Everyone who got digital rewards, so the ebook, they're all getting that on Halloween, and everyone else
Yep.
is just getting all their physical rewards or books over the next couple of weeks. They're all being posted now. And then I'm in the run up then for actual launch, like release
Very
in February.
exciting.
So yeah, it was all pretty quick. Luckily, I had a bit of time.
And just because I do know what Kickstarter is, but don't quite understand how it works in terms
Mm.
of now that the campaign is closed, does that mean no one can order through that now, or can they still order the book from you in advance?
Yes, and yes. So they can no longer be part of the Kickstarter. That is finished. You
Right.
can actually set your Kickstarter up so that you can take late pledges for a couple of weeks afterwards,
Okay.
which I tried to do and it didn't work. So that was
Oh,
disappointing because there were a few people who were like, oh, I missed out. And I was like, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. However, you can then set your button on your Kickstarter page to go to a link somewhere else. So that's
right.
linking now to my shop. I've got my own website shop and people can go there and pre-order. So I'm doing pre-orders for the hardcover, the softcover, and the ebook. And then those people will get the book a few days early from the actual formal release date, which is the 2nd of Feb.
Very cool. So, if just in case people think they've missed out, they haven't missed out. They can still order
That's
a
right.
copy.
So they can find that on Kickstarter if they look for the name of the book. And the link will take them straight to my website, or they can just go to ashharrier.com.
Great. Okay. And so ashharrier.com is the place to come to order a copy, and they will be released in February. Is there anything else you'd like to share with me while we have time together?
Yeah, I guess one thing I didn't mention earlier, which is what is Kickstarter? Because I think a lot of people don't know. They think it is either like a GoFundMe type website, and
Mm.
it's absolutely not. So the difference is GoFundMe is donations. Kickstarter is you're buying something. Basically, you're pledging money because you think this is a good idea, or you want to read this book,
Yep.
or you want this invented product, or whatever it is. You pledge the money. No, your money doesn't get taken until the Kickstarter ends.
Oh,
So you actually set a goal. My goal was, I think, $1,300, which came in just under the $1,000 US. People see the currency in their own local
mhm.
money. Once it hits that goal, that means you've got the green light, your Kickstarter is funded, but it stays open for however long you selected it was going to stay open. So then it's just building from there. And then only when it ends, which I chose a 3-week period, does the money get taken out of people's accounts.
Right.
So if the Kickstarter doesn't get off the ground for whatever reason, because your goal is too high or your product is not compelling enough, then no one gets charged. And that's one thing I really liked about Kickstarter, because I figured, you know what? No one's going to get hurt here if this doesn't work.
Mhm.
So that was really important to me. It was also really important to me that I wasn't just asking for money for nothing. I wanted
Yeah.
people to be getting something for their money. So if that kind of appeals to an author, I would thoroughly recommend it, because it is a really good way to raise awareness about a project that you're working on and to create something really special that people would love to have on their bookshelves.
And are you going to try to do that again with when it's time to release the second book and the third?
Yeah, I'm still making up my mind how I'm going to do that. I'm either going to do one Kickstarter for both
Mhm.
and then, have the full set kind of available, perhaps with like one of those slipcovers that you can put all the books into, or I'm going to do one each. But it's going to be fairly quick release next year. I'm hoping to do February, then May for book 2, then September for book 3. So I don't know if I'd maybe be pushing my luck a bit with my friends and family by posting every day again about Kickstarters twice like that. Yeah, I think perhaps I might combine the two. They also are a heck of a lot of work. So make sure you've kind of cleared your diary for 3 weeks or however long you do it for. Don't overcommit, because it's a lot more work than you think it's going to be.
And I think also identifying what value you're providing, like I find it challenging to say, can you support my project? I'm not really sure what I'm giving you back in return. And I think value depends on the individual as well. So people like we come from a gaming family, so
Yes.
we're often getting parcels arrive that are from a Kickstarter where a
Yeah.
t-shirt's arrived or some special dice has arrived and
Yeah.
like, oh, okay.
That's very
um
cool.
yeah, so people do place value on different things as well. And so just
Yeah, I think
identifying what's popular.
yeah. And I think what a lot of people love about Kickstarter is the physical nature of what you're getting. Generally, people are in it. Like most people, very few people only bought the ebook. Most people were there for the physical book,
Mm,
and they loved the idea of getting, the matching charm bracelet and stuff like that. That was
sounds cool. Even
appealing. Yeah, it was
I'm going,
like fun
oh,
shopping.
can I get a charm bracelet?
Yeah, and kind of coming up with the concepts for those things was really good fun. I know we talked about merch, but I've got these on the book itself. I'll show you. I know that your listeners can't see this, but on the inside you'll see there's like a mandala with 7 symbols.
Hmm.
Oof, I don't know which way to show that. And that's always been part of the story, but I was able this time to get it redesigned, made really beautiful, and then use those symbols all through the merch. So in the art cards, but also because you can get charms for practically anything now. So the charm bracelet has the 7 gift charms on, a heart, a hand, a skull, a star, stuff like that. So it all matches, and it's just really, really, what's the word? Satisfying the way it matches.
So potentially next year is going to be a lot around releasing those 3 books. Have you got any other projects in the background happening while you're working on those?
I do. I always have lots of projects happening. I'm working currently through a major edit of my 2025. At this stage, it's 2025, but it might change to 2026. title, which is an adult historical coming out through Pantera Press, because I'm now a proud hybrid author, kind of working in the indie zone as well as in the traditional publishing zone. And I'm really excited about that. That one's set in Oxford in 1928, and I got to do some amazing travel research for that one. I've also got a kids book that I'm kind of pitching at the moment, and yeah, continuing to work on the Ash Harrier name because I would really love to get some more kind of dark academia books out under that name. I'm really enjoying writing that genre, and I've had some ideas. So I'm just kind of waiting to get this current project finished so that I can chase that bright, shiny new thing.
So it sounds like there's a lot on the boil for you. No rest for the
Always.
wicked at all. Well, I've really been pleased to hear that your project was a success and also that it is a pathway to publication for authors as well, in terms of that Kickstarter is something that you can play with and experiment with to get your book out. Because I think that is half the battle at times, is trying to get traditionally published, and it doesn't always happen. It's a real slow burn, but there are other ways to get your book out into the world. So it sounds like it's a really fun, creative process as well. I'm like, oh, I'd
Yes.
get a few dopamine hits from doing a
Oh my
Kickstarter.
God, yeah, that's actually a really good way to describe it. And often, as you'll know, when it's release day for your book, it's kind of a big anticlimax because you're waiting for this day. It happens, and you've got literally no data when you're traditionally
Mm.
published. You're just sitting there and you go, oh, well, okay, that was that. Whereas at least doing a Kickstarter, it finishes and it's like, yes, it funded, and now I get to go and do all these fun
Yay.
things.
I have to admit, you've really just described what my day was like on when my book came out. I was just at work in meetings doing my thing, and it was like any other day, except in the world my book was out.
Yeah, it's
And
kind
it
of that
did feel a
secret
bit
knowledge, isn't it?
sad. I was like, oh, should be like feeling wonderful, but I'm just getting on with it.
True. And I think a lot of authors have that kind of a little bit of post-release depression almost because
Mm.
you think that something major, like the world's going to change somehow on that day,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't, and you're quite disappointed. And my cat's had this habit of always vomiting on the morning of my book releases as well,
Oh,
so that was a nice little
is that
tradition.
an indicator of success, though? If they vomit, the book's going to sell well.
It was an indicator of great stress and annoyance. That's what I could tell you.
Yep. Yeah, animals, they are wonderful to have in your life, but they can also create chaos.
Oh yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ash, for joining me. I really enjoyed learning, and I have joined the Kickstarter for Authors group. Hopefully, they
Brilliant.
let me in.
I'll see you in there then. Cool.
That's
Are you
my
thinking about
ideas
doing one?
now. Maybe I do have some stories that aren't getting any traction the way I
Yeah.
would like, so it might be a different pathway. But if anything, I'll learn something.
Yes, absolutely. Well, make sure I mean, hopefully I'll notice online, but if I don't, please let me know. I'd love to check it out.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your experiences with our listeners.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.